This is not really a story about treasure. It's about what happens when you go looking for something and are transformed. Hello, I'm Drew Ray, author and illustrator of the book The Tale Unknown. Today I'm going to be answering some questions that I've gotten from my most recent stream and questions that I've gotten in my DMs about the story. Without further ado, let's get right into it. First question is, what is The Tale Unknown? It's a very simple answer. It's a illustrated verse novel, which is a collection of poems. It's 49 poems and 24 illustrations that are all collectively put together in chronological order to tell a cohesive story. It follows a captain and his 6 crew members as they journey throughout the seas to try to find 7 mythical lands that are just stories that they've heard of passed down from generation to generation. We'll just get straight into the next question, which is, where did the idea come from? I started this idea about 2 years ago, where I was writing a lot of poetry, and I wanted to write something that wasn't necessarily about myself or about my current situations or problems. I wanted to write a poem about something different. So I sat down and I wrote a poem called Unknown, which I'm not going to tell you any details about right now. It's not in this book. It's actually what I am setting up to be the very last poem of the entire series. And yeah, it was just trying to write a poem about something out of this world. And that was the first time that I even had the idea, and it has spawned what ended up really being the last 2.5 years, because I drew the first image about 2.5 years ago. And I decided to incorporate illustrating into the book because of my very first charcoal portrait that I ever did, which is now one of the main characters, one of the crew members of the story. So that is where the idea came from as a whole. The next question that I have gotten asked is this a story or is it something else? And the simple answer is yes, it is a story. The poems do fit together chronologically, even though they were written over the course of the last 2 years. The illustrations are meant to be able to stand on their own. Like, you don't necessarily need to read the story to appreciate the art behind it. And that is really just like how I work, I guess. I work in fragments, and I try to explore what I'm feeling at any given moment. And if I come up with a good idea that I think fits with the story or fits into the novel, I'll either illustrate it first and then write a poem for the illustration afterwards, or sometimes it's the opposite, where I'll write a poem first and be like, man, this really belongs in the story, and then I'll just draw an illustration for it or sketch something that fits it, and I just piece them together. And I think that the fact that it's a culmination of a lot of fragments of myself over time is really the core of the book. It's just the fact that it's you're seeing growth patterns throughout time. And I think that that's a very interesting concept for a novel like this. The next question is, who is the captain? To me, the captain is a very, very interesting character. All of the characters in the story are very psychologically driven. Um, but the captain is basically one of the three main characters of the story, and you get to hear his perspective probably the most out of all of the characters, because a lot of the poems end up falling into a category which I call either the captain's logs or the ghost logs, which are all written from just his perspective. So he he's a 20-year-old man just trying to fulfill his father's dreams, and ends up biting off a lot more than he can chew. And yeah, I would just say, like, for people who are really interested in who the captain is, like, just keep asking me questions, keep uh reading, and you'll uncover who he is over time. I think that's the best way to answer that. The next question is, what is the world that these characters are in? And to me, this universe that I'm building is heavily focused on crossing thresholds between what is the physical form and the spiritual form. And it's not necessarily super spiritual, it's more like a darker, surreal kind of shifting of reality over time. Um, and I just think that there's a lot of beauty in, like, the way that I've been writing these characters and the way that I've been illustrating these characters and illustrating the landscapes of the world. It's a pretty interesting world that they live in, because they start out on a landlocked island, just thinking that they're going to sail out all the the known world, and find these mythical lands. And they end up coming across Devil's Island, is what they dubbed the island. And on the island, they experience so much. It's actually the setting of I would say, a good 60 to 70% of this book one. Things really start to change when the characters meet some of the more spiritual characters, and mythical characters who inhabit the island, such as the tailor Paris, who is an oracle, or Pandora slash Lilith. That's the best way to describe the world that they're in, is that it's predominantly on this cursed land, and they're trying to navigate this shifting of reality with unknown destinations in mind. The next question that I've gotten is, who or what is Pandora slash Lilith? And that is a very difficult question to answer. But essentially, Pandora and Lilith are two sides of one character. She answers to both names because some of the ghosts and spirits on the island refer to her as Lilith, meaning she is like the devil's daughter, and she's just the fierce dictator, ruiner of worlds, like really the big bad of the story. Whereas the other half of the spirits and ghosts on the island treat her as the goddess. She is known as the Princess of the Moon. She is this light within the darkness. And it causes a lot of chaos throughout the story. But I think that writing a character that is based on having like split personalities and this concept of like having a personality disorder is very intense, and you can come up with a lot of really cool ideas. So that is essentially who Pandora and Lilith are, is two fragments of one whole character. And to find out more about her and about their story, like, you can dive into the book and really start to understand who they are and how they fit into the world. The next question that I got was actually a pretty popular question. Is why is everything so fragmented when I talk about the book or the characters or anything like that? And it's a very intentional design process that I go through where, like I said earlier, like I will create an image one day and I'm like, man, this would really fit into the story. And so then I try to write poetry surrounding that image to include into the story. Or the opposite will happen, where I'll write a poem that I feel like fits into the narrative right where I left off, and I just like get so inspired by it where I'll do an illustration for it and build it up and build it up and put it into the final story. And that's basically how things really came together. Was, it reflected on a lot of my real experiences during the times that I wrote these poems or did these illustrations. And I really wanted it to be kind of intentionally fragmented so that you're jumping around from character perspective to another, or jumping from this ghostly, like ethereal state to the physical world and back and forth. I really wanted it to be an immersive experience. So that's why I made everything so fragmented. The next question that I get asked is, how do I actually create the artwork for this story? And to me, creating the artwork has been one of the most fun experiences I've had in a long time, where I don't use reference photos. I don't use reference images for characters. I don't use reference images for landscapes, anything like that. I try to use my imagination as much as possible and I start out with a lot of chaotic scribbles and sketching until I get a piece that I end up feeling like fits into the story. Um, you can actually check out a lot of my process videos here on YouTube, or I will also be doing like streams and things like that on Twitch and on YouTube for when I'm coming up with illustrations for book 2. So, you know, if you want, I would suggest like hitting thumbs up, subscribing to the channel for more, and you'll be able to see book 2 be built over time. The next question that I get is, how long did this take to make in total? And I would say uh, it's really just because it's been done in such a fragmented form that it takes a long time. But I have been working on this universe for about 2.5 years now. And, you know, I'm going to keep working on it until I feel like I've told every possible story of this universe that I want to. So it really has evolved over time, and I've been able to grow with the story. And I think that that is some of the most beautiful parts of this book. The last question that I have for today is, what does this project mean to me? It means a lot. It means to me, it's very symbolic of who I am and very symbolic of what I go through. Um, without spoiling a lot of information, each one of the characters is based on um, various mental disorders that I have been diagnosed with over the last couple of years. And to me, it's just like this story represents an ongoing journey of navigating this physical plane with the psychological issues that real people have and struggle with and go through. And I want to, you know, keep working on this story. It's a big motivator that I'm not finished, and I don't know when I will be finished, and that is very exciting to me. Um, throughout this process, I've been able to do a lot of really, really cool artwork. I've been able to write a lot of very psychologically driven poems, and to me, it's just like the experience of building a universe is so fascinating and so intriguing to me that I will keep chasing that until it no longer feels like it fits with my core values and beliefs and how I view things. So that that is probably the best way I can describe what this journey and this story really means to me. All of the information that I've covered so far has been just a very small part of what this world and what this universe actually has to offer, and there's still so much more to uncover over time. I'll be sharing more of the process videos of how I make the art and how I do writing poetry and things like that. And if you want to follow along the journey, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitch. You can also go to my website, liminalstudio.art, For updates, you can join my newsletter there. The book will be released here soon. I finally got my author copies back, and I am going to be approving them and publishing them for purchase on my site within the next week or so. So everything will be available to be owned by you at home. You'll be able to take some of these small artifacts with you and really dive into this journey with me. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Peace out.